Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Sunday night video. This week I am filming in Jesmond Old Cemetery, which is also in Jesmond near Newcastle. And this is one, hopefully, of several videos covering a little information about some of the amazing people buried within the walls of the cemetery. I hope you will enjoy it and find it interesting. But before we begin, if you do enjoy this video, then please give it a thumbs up. And if you are new here or haven't already done so, then do please consider subscribing to the channel to help support the content we create. Thank you. It is completely free to subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you any money, but it really does help to support the channel. And I finally just wanted to add that although I do have notes, I'd never remember all of the information without them. I am recording in a more sort of ad-lib kind of way, so I might just use a few more Geordie words than I normally do. So I do hope that everyone watching is able to understand me. So I'm going to walk down like this little corridor again, and I've walked down this one before in a couple of other videos that you might have seen. So what I'm going to do now is come to this headstone here. Now, because the sun is shining very, very brightly today, you may get some reflection on the headstone. Now, it's quite a difficult headstone to film because it's on its back. I was going to say it was on its side, but that's how it kind of looks when you look at it through the screen. So it's quite difficult to do it sort of and be able to see everything without it being a little bit on an angle. But anyway, we'll do the best we can. So Benjamin Plumber was born in around 1815 in Yorkshire, and his parents are unknown, and he married Grace Fell in around 1847, and the couple would go on to have at least 8 children together, including Walter and Frederick, who were twins. And I guess that if you wanted to describe the earlier work that Benjamin did, then you would likely call him a jack of all trades, as in 1851 he was a brass founder, a plumber and a painter, and then later he was a metal merchant. However, by 1871 he was simply described as being a magistrate and a commission agent. He died in 1889 at the age of 73, and he left his estate to his widow Grace and his children. Now, Benjamin must have had a fairly good income over the years, as his estate amounted to over £44,000, which is well over £7 million today. His wife Grace died in 1907 at the age of 83. Also on the same headstone is Sir Walter Richard Plumber. Now, I think that you can possibly just see that there, because that's his name just going across there. So he was born in around 1858 in Newcastle, and Sir Walter, and the Servit was an honour that he received in 1904, was also a magistrate and an alderman of Newcastle, and he was also a member of Parliament for Newcastle from 1900 until 1906. And he was a director of the North Eastern Railway Company, chairman to the Wallsend Slipway and Engineering Company, and vice chairman of the Newcastle Gas Company. He was very highly thought of in the town of Newcastle, and it was said that his work for the good of the people of the town was unending. Sir Walter died in December of 1917 at the age of 59. Now, I was unable to find any evidence that he was married, and when his death was announced in the local papers at the time, no mention was made of a widow. So it was quite possible that he was not married. That he was not married. Sarah Plumber, his sister, also never married, as she died in March of 1923 at the age of 73. And the next name on the headstone is the Reverend Frederick Matthew Plumber, which I'm hoping you can see that, because there really is a very bright sunlight shining that I can see. So I hope that you can see it. So Frederick Matthew Plumber, I totally forgot what I was going to say, and I'm looking at the notes that my lovely assistant is holding, and I still forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, the Reverend Frederick Matthew Plumber was the vicar of St Hilda's Church in Sunderland in 1928 when he died, and his funeral at the time was to be conducted by the Bishop of Durham. However, due to severe weather, he was unable to attend. And the main service was held at St Hilda's, and then the burial later took place at Jesmond. And as is often the case in the newspapers of the time, they managed to make an error when reporting details of his death, stating that the brass cross on his coffin bore the inscription, died the 12th of December 1928, aged 79. However, the Reverend Frederick was actually only 70 years old, which you can see, and I'm just zooming on there, that it does say that he's only 70, not 79. And the final name on this family memorial is that of John Thomas Plumber, who died in 1929 at the age of 80. And John Thomas was a metal merchant, the same as his father before him. I didn't find any evidence of a marriage for John. So I'm now going to walk down here, and I'm going to head to the next headstone that I'm going to look at. And I just want to say that I do have somebody helping us. I can't hold the camera and the notes, and I know that you probably did hear us say you've turned 2 pages over at once just before, so I just wanted to mention that, because the pages do often stick together. So the next headstone, as I say, that I'm going to look at is just down here, and I'm trying to get round so that there isn't a shadow, but it's quite difficult because of the weather. But because it's strange to complain about the weather being nice, but it does create shadows. So this is the memorial for the Reverend Joseph Smithard Hind. So the Reverend Joseph Smithard Hind was born in Derbyshire in around 1826 to parents William and Emily. And it's maybe worth noting that he was one of at least 10 children, and he was the only one with the name Hind attached to his surname. And when I was looking at the ancestry records, his marriage details do not include the Hind, nor is it included in the details of the birth of his son George. However, by the time his son William is born, it has been added to his name, and as you can see there, quite possibly if I zoom up, you can see that his son, George, who I've just mentioned before, is buried in the same place, and it does say Smithard Hind on there, so they must have all changed their name to include the Hind. So Joseph became a priest in around 1850, and by 1851 he was in residence at Bishop Wearmouth in Sunderland. He married Elizabeth Cram in Newcastle in around 1856, and the couple would have at least 3 children together. He was a vicar at Cramlington for several years, and it seems that during this time he was taken to court by his servant Mary Mulholland for allegedly pouring water over her to wake her up when she was in, and she was not very happy about that. And after the alleged incident, she handed in her notice, and the Reverend then paid her wages up to date and gave her an extra 10 shillings. And perhaps because of this, when the case went to court, it was quickly dismissed, and Mary did not get any more money from the Reverend. So the Reverend died in July of 1881 at the age of just 55. His widow Elizabeth died in February of 1884 at the age of around 60 years. And also buried, as I mentioned before, in the same plot are his son George, who died in 1893, and his wife Agnes, who died in 1894. Now I have got a little bit of a walk to the next one, and I'm just going to go this way, because if I go the other way it's a little bit higher, because this is part of the man-made section at this part of the cemetery, and it's obviously, it is, as you can see, it's raised, but it doesn't have, and that's another shadow of me, so you can't really sort of there's no steps, so you have to kind of jump down. So I try to find a lower part so that I don't jump and break my neck. So I'm coming round now to this headstone here. Now this is the family burial place of David Byrne. So this is basically the story of David Byrne. So David Byrne was born in 1797 in Cramlington to parents Peter and Margaret, and he was one of at least 8 children. David was an iron manufacturer, which you can see, it mentions that on his headstone. and also, I believe, an engine builder. He married Barbara in around 1819, and the couple had at least one child together. Barbara died in 1842 at the age of 45, and David would later go on to marry Frances in 1850. In later years, David could be found living in Little Benton, which was part of Long Benton at the time, and it was here that he died in March of 1873 at the age of around 76. And his second wife Frances died just a month after him in 1873 at the age of 74. And you can see that David, his first wife and his second wife are all in this burial plot. And David left a very large estate to his son John Henry, which in 1873 was around £70,000. And John also inherited the estate of his stepmother Frances, which was around £2,000. So a total of £72,000, which in today's money would be almost £10 million. Now, I do know that John Henry is also buried in Jesmond Cemetery, but I will leave his story for another video. So the last one that I'm going to talk about in today's video, in this video, honestly, this is why I need notes, because I trip over my own words even when I've got them. And the last one that I'm coming to is this one here, and this is the family burial place of David Colvin. And David Colvin was a rope maker of Gateshead. So this is basically the story of David Colvin. So David was born in Gateshead in around 1775 to parents Robert and Mary. It's not known if he had any brothers or sisters. He married Charlotte in around 1797, although it may have been a little earlier than this, as it was said that his first child was born in 1794. The couple had at least 6 children together, and David, as I mentioned before, was a twine and rope manufacturer at Gateshead, and he was listed still in this job in 1841 when he was around 66 years old. However, by 1851 he was living with family and was listed as a retired rope maker. David died in 1857, aged 82 years, and his wife Charlotte died in 1845, aged 70 years. There are various other family members listed on this family headstone, such as their daughter Charlotte, who had died in 1830 at the age of 14 years, and also their grandson Thomas, who died in 1845, aged 2.5 years old. So you can see those there, because I'm zooming up, but I believe that's Charlotte there that you can see, and just underneath that you can see Thomas Embleton Colvin, the grandson, who was 2.5 years old. So that is all I'm going to cover for this week's video. So I do hope that you have enjoyed this short little video about some of the people buried in Jesmond Old Cemetery, and I do hope that you have found it interesting, and I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again very soon.